Welcome to the Brainy8 Show, where we talk about all things Salesforce, sharing the coolest features, solutions, and best practices to turn you into a Salesforce rockstar. Here's your host, former attorney turned Salesforce consultant, trainer, and MVP, David Giller.
In this episode, I sit down for a chat with Caleb Steen. Caleb is a manager for SMB Solution Engineering at MapAnything, based in Charlotte, North Carolina. Caleb gives us a glimpse into his own introduction to Salesforce, while also providing some great insight on how organizations improve their strategic planning by visually displaying their Salesforce data based on geographical territories using a bit of magic from MapAnything. Caleb Steen, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Great. Thanks, David. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So, Caleb, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you first got introduced to Salesforce and what the experience was like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it actually started on my very first day at MapAnything when I came on board as an inside sales rep. To be honest, I had never heard of it beforehand. We never covered it at school. On a side note, if there are any Clemson University administrators listening out there, I'm more than happy to lead up that curriculum program.
Ooh, nice.
At MapAnything. Back to your question, David, it was a little bit overwhelming. I remember sitting through a training, trying to understand what an opportunity was, what it had to do with an account, and honestly, when lunch was. Where I truly became introduced to Salesforce and truly took a further understanding was when I switched over from sales to the solution engineering role that I'm in today. Just made a little bit more sense. I had time to spend with tools like Trailhead and like reading these different manuals and online help articles, which truly took it to the next level for me, getting into the exciting stuff like validation rules and profile-based permissions, all that good stuff.
Yep. That makes sense. And what kind of resources did you leverage? You mentioned Trailhead. Is there anything else that you leveraged other than Trailhead to get yourself up to speed on, from being a newbie on the Salesforce platform to where you are today?
Honestly, besides Trailhead, David, I would say the biggest thing was honestly trial and error, was trying to break stuff, was getting my hands dirty and setting fields and objects up. Actually, at the time, my manager, when I first started as a solution engineer, plopped this big old heavy book on my desk and said, read chapter 8. I was like, oh, how bad could that be? And then I found out it was about profiles and role-based permissions.
Oh, boy.
And it was 150 pages long, chapter-wise. So it was that was a big grunt of it, a lot of the meat of it. But I still have those notes. But to your point, Trailhead has been number one for me. I still use it today. So I kind of love the interaction. I love the way that it tests you on the fly. So a mix of those is certainly what I have been using to this day.
That's great. Awesome stuff. Tell me a little bit about MapAnything. So there are a lot of people, I'm familiar with MapAnything. There are many people who have never heard of MapAnything before. So what on earth do you guys provide? What problem does MapAnything solve? And what features does it introduce into Salesforce?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, David. So, MapAnything, what we are is first off, we're a partner with Salesforce.com. Actually, part of their AppExchange ecosystem, we run very closely with them. Being native to the Salesforce platform. We actually don't leave Salesforce to use this at all. We're a quickly growing company who actually just took our Series B funding here about a month ago, which is super exciting. It's allowed us to, get into some of these different product lines, which I'm sure we'll talk through a little bit here today.
Yep.
But, what we really do and do well is we allow a Salesforce user to answer the where question. Where are my biggest customers? Where is the white space? Where are my available technicians in the field? And, where should I go next? So, allowing people to visualize accounts, leads, all on the same page, giving them access to plan trips, log activities, all within that Salesforce ecosystem and interface. So we kind of branch multiple different personas. When I do a ton of demos in my day-to-day, and, we work from everyone from sales reps to your marketing coordinator to your VP of sales who's trying to create and manage their different sales territories. So
I always think of MapAnything anytime, and this happens often, when a client of mine will basically say, you know how in a lot of offices there's a map with different push pins indicating where certain deals or either territories that they want to go into, or where certain deals are happening, or certain types of customers exist. Is there a way to have that type of visual representation in Salesforce? And the first thing that comes out of my mouth is MapAnything.
Well, we appreciate that, David. I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean,
Yeah.
literally any standard or custom object, you can drop a pin on the map. You can assign a color to it to represent a value. Maybe you want to do it by revenue or do it by your hot, warm, and cold leads. I mean, if you can imagine it, you can set that up and MapAnything.
Yeah. Awesome. Is there a particular juicy, interesting story that you could share about how the company got started and found a niche in this particular space?
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite stories to tell. It's back before I was part of MapAnything, but I feel like I've heard it and regurgitated it so many different times. I feel like it's my story. But so it actually started in 2009. A couple guys named John Stewart and Ben Brantley started a services company actually called Sabre Solutions. Specialized in Force.com implementations. Did a lot of ERP integrations. Some really thrilling and exciting stuff. But one day this waste management customer in New York City promised, they're not in the mafia, but they came up and said, we're having issues locating our dumpsters, right? We want a map to plot these assets and our other Salesforce data, like our work orders and our cases and all this really, business relevant information. So instead of buying an existing one out there, I'm actually not sure if there was one out there in the market at the time, but Ben Brantley, our CTO, who's absolutely brilliant, by the way, one of the smartest guys. I think he raises my IQ by 10 every time I meet him, but he said that he could build it, and the rest is history. So here we are. At that point, we rebranded to Cloud Build. We offered a suite of products from, data upload tools, automated compliance tools. But after being called the people behind MapAnything for long enough, leadership decided to kind of ride that wave, drop the other products. We rebranded to MapAnything. Right around the time we got our Series A. But yeah, that's kind of the original story.
Wow. Who would have ever thought that a company that's focused on waste management would want to leverage some type of mapping capability to keep track of their dumpsters? Because most people, I think, would automatically think as like a reflex when you think of whether it's MapAnything or just leveraging a map. It's how do I get from point A to point B, or how do I see data regarding customers or deals or issues? But here we're talking about assets, to identify where the assets are and where the assets might be moving from place to place.
No, absolutely, and it's kind of it's interesting because it comes full circle because this very same waste management company that was using these static images, these static pins to help remember and locate these dumpsters that they're using. That very same waste management company that was using these static pins to locate these dumpsters that they were losing was now also our very first MapAnything Live customer. So now they have GPS devices on these dumpsters that they use to track location. They automate billing. So now we can geofence their customer location. So as soon as that dumpster arrives, the billing cycle starts, ends when it leaves. And at the same time, they're tracking their trucks, with a device about the size of a tangerine hooked up to the engine that's now automating some of that as well. So they're our first MapAnything Core customer and also our first MapAnything Live customer as well.
Wow. Can you share a particular success story? And it might be with this waste management company. It might be with another company that demonstrates how the company has transformed the way an organization does business through the use of your app.
One of our nonprofit partners, Blue Star Families, so these folks have, used to have issues diving into data, finding out how many members were in a city, a state, a zip code, and it was truly affecting their marketing efforts, right? So, they'd have to build these reports by zip code, and it's, manual and labor intensive. I'm sure you've had to do that yourself. From a marketing perspective, they had to send blasts across the nation or essentially throw darts at the map. They're guessing where their constituents were located. So what MapAnything did, we installed MapAnything, helped get them set up, and it instantly gave them visibility into the location of their membership base. It helped them with allocating resources, making decisions on chapter expansion, or where to host these events that they have, on a continuous basis. But then at the very end, by that, it also gave them information to the right people, right? So a great example of that is they participated in New York City's Veterans Day Parade not too long ago, and what they did is they drew a quick 30-mile proximity circle around, the parade route, and using our mass actions, added every single one of their members to a campaign, inviting them to join. So just the little things like that, it makes it a little bit more real, makes it a little bit more tangible, and truly help them, with some of these marketing efficiencies.
Wow, that's very cool. It's great to see how, very often I see a company that will get all excited about a particular app, and they'll ask me, "Oh, I saw this video about a certain app. Should we get it? Can we get it?" And I ask them, "How would you use it? How is it going to impact the business?" And a lot of times I get faced with like shrugged shoulders, and I sort of think of it like a teenager who has a smartphone and they want to download various apps and they don't really know why, but it's something shiny, and why not? Can I? If it's possible, why don't I? But they don't have the big picture identified. And here, what you've just highlighted is where it really doesn't matter which came first. If the pain point and the big picture strategy was identified first, and they've decided, hey, let's use MapAnything to solve for it, or they happen to come across MapAnything by, even if it's happenstance, but the strategy fit into it after the fact. But either way, it's pretty magical when that type of scenario happens, because it's a tool that's otherwise, okay, it's just a tool, it's just an app. But when it's used to completely transform the way you operate and to streamline efficiencies within the organization, I love seeing that magic happen.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And sometimes we see that even with our own customer base, where they'll purchase MapAnything for something very specific. I mean, where they'll maybe the marketing coordinator just wants to run heat maps to see where their campaigns are truly taking hold, but then maybe the sales manager walks by our desk and says, okay, well, great, maybe I could use that too. And it just continues to kind of facilitate itself and grow organically, which is, it's exciting. It's always fun to watch.
Yeah, that's great. Cool. Tell me a little bit about, if you can identify the biggest misconception that people usually have when they think of MapAnything.
Biggest misconception.
Maybe there isn't any. Maybe it's abundantly clear to everyone.
No. Actually, one certainly comes to mind. I mean, when you're on the phone with a customer or a potential customer, the question always is, well, why can't I just use Google Maps? Why aren't you guys just Google Maps? And in honest reality, we're much more than that. Sure, we leverage Google Maps for our map tiles and the ability to point of interest search from the map. But what we really do is we give you context to your business data, right? We're taking, this visibility and giving you the ability to drive action, cut costs, schedule more meetings, hopefully giving you more revenue, right? Getting you in front of the right people at the right time. So, allowing you to take any object, record, field, asset, mix it all together, plot it on a map. I think there's a lot of value to that. Imagine the reports that you run every single day. Yeah. But instead of rows and columns, you have a map covered in pins colored by any value that you want, helping you prioritize that data. You can have an idea of proximity, of opportunity value, of who the closest service tech is in that area for an urgent case for your largest client, just because you hooked a GPS device up to their truck. Right.
Yeah, the visualization is, it just completely changes the way you see your own data, your own live records, your prospects, your existing customers and clients, your assets, like for the waste management company, and where they're moving. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to think about how much we use location in our personal lives. I mean, apps like Uber, Google, Yelp.
Right.
And we decided, hey, why don't we bring that to the professional world too? And instead of using Yelp to find the best mildly priced Asian fusion restaurant in town to impress the state, why don't we get to do those opportunities instead, and with the highest propensity to close?
Right.
So that's kind of the idea behind it.
Right. I mean, just imagine a sales rep that's out in the field visiting a customer, maybe even following up on an issue, on a problem, not even necessarily related to closing a deal. And as they walk out, they realize, okay, I just resolved the issue a little earlier than anticipated. And they look on MapAnything and they can see, what other prospects do I have in this area that's in my database that I really need to be following up with? And maybe I can go visit them on site.
You got it. I mean, that is our bread and butter, David. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
see that, every single day. So
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree more.
That's great. Tell me a little bit about the most creative or unconventional way that you've seen customers using MapAnything.
Most unconventional. Okay. So I've got two answers to this actually.
Mm-hmm.
One is a little bit more personal. One is customer based, but
Mm-hmm.
at the personal level, and I'm not really sure if it counts, but a couple of years ago, there was this wonderful intern from one of the big banks or accounting firms here in Charlotte. I honestly don't remember which, but this intern either took it upon themselves or was
Mm-hmm.
tasked with compiling a list of every single happy hour location in town, with their specials and their entertainment offerings, right? So, one day I remember it was right around when I switched over to solution engineering, but
Mm-hmm.
this young professional's holy grail found itself at my desk in my inbox. And I said, okay, well, great. I need to spin up a developer org anyways for Trailhead. Well, nice to go ahead and throw these happy hours in there. It's in an Excel sheet, and I just have to do a little data manipulation, and it kind of took up a life of its own from there.
There you go. Hey, a lot of times that works, and depending on what type of job you have, what industry you're in, that could be very helpful for people.
Oh yeah, and it's great to get an understanding of some of the nuances of Salesforce as well. I actually used it to learn about some visual workflows,
Mm-hmm.
tying into some of our check-in and check-out functionality within MapAnything, being
Mm-hmm.
able to actually prompt the user to fill out a service review. So played around with that a little bit. Used our click to create functionality to find net new happy hour locations,
Mm-hmm.
actually right there from the map. So it not only, of course, looked great in MapAnything, and I could brag about it, but I personally got some value out of it, as I worked through it, which was great as I was learning this new system.
Wow, that's awesome. So tell me about. So it sounded like there was another one. There was a second story that you have.
There is this one. This one's actually one of my favorite MapAnything stories, just because it's a very unique use case.
Uh-huh.
And what they do is this company is a property management company,
Mm-hmm.
and they define these markets or these sales territories, but they do it by the population, right?
Right.
So they want to make sure it's right in their wheelhouse. So with MapAnything, we provide some census data out of the box, as well as some housing and ACS information.
Mm-hmm.
So think having the ability to overlay your Salesforce data along with census data that you can aggregate. So they drop these pins on the map,
Mm-hmm.
right from they drop these pins on the map
Mm-hmm.
that represent a zip code with a population number associated to it. Then they use a freehand tool or some of our zip code shape layers and define these markets once they've identified that it lines up with the threshold that they've deemed to be best. From there, they save that shape, and they now have a brand new sales territory just because they now leveraged this census data with a map perspective behind the scenes. So it's really powerful, and then from there they can come and they mass assign their accounts and their leads and their opportunities, all just with some of our mass action tools within MapAnything.
Wow. That's pretty slick.
Absolutely. It was actually their idea. I mean, we were on the phone and working through solutions and making sure that we could get it to be a good fit, and it kind of conversation led down the right road, and they talked us through it, and it's stuck, and it was really interesting and really powerful to see, even before they were a customer, kind of getting their hands dirty and thinking through the meat of MapAnything.
It's pretty neat. So tell me, if you could give one piece of advice to companies who are struggling with integrating MapAnything into their day-to-day operations, or companies that already have MapAnything, but they only see it as like a one-trick pony, where they're not seeing the bigger picture of the different ways that they can use it. What piece of advice would you give to those customers?
Sure, that's a great question, David. So, shoot, where to begin? I guess kind of starting from the back and working our way, towards the front. I would say if you already have MapAnything and you want to integrate it into different aspects of your day-to-day or your business, I would say just work out of it. I think it's an interface that's very clean, it's very visual, and it's very straightforward. And what I mean by that is you can pull up your Salesforce records, eliminate the noise. When I was a sales rep, I really only focused on a handful of fields, and MapAnything allowed me to quickly populate those, edit those, log activities without having to sort through different facets of Salesforce, which can be a little overwhelming, especially when you're a 22-year-old, sales rep right out of school who has never seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's certainly, I would say step one is just dive in and get your hands dirty. And then I think it's important to think about your business metrics. What's important to you? A lot of times when we speak with a brand new customer, they're focused on increased activity, increased visits. And I think what I've found is once they've truly conceptualized that,
Right.
it's much easier to build a plan
Mm-hmm.
and then take action with a tool like MapAnything. I think that applies to any tool that you're implementing, whether that's something like DocuSign or whether that's Calendar or anything. I mean, I think it applies across the board.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great way of looking at the tool from the perspective of the organization, as well as from the individual's perspective, because it's like so many people will only use, let's say, Excel for a certain use case and not realizing there's a lot more that you can do with Excel. Same holds true for MapAnything.
No, absolutely. And I think it just comes down to having those conversations. And here internally, we have recently started an internal Salesforce committee where truly the champions of Salesforce within MapAnything can bounce ideas off each other. They talk through processes, they share what's worked, what's maybe needs some tweaking, and tools like that pop up. When we evaluate a tool, it goes through this different committee members' hands, so everyone has their eyes on it, can provide feedback. So someone on our client success team can give feedback that maybe someone like myself, who's more on the pre-sale side of the building,
Right.
might not have that same perspective. So it's really powerful to have different ideas and different thought processes working through the same product or the same
Right.
solution.
Absolutely. Yeah, having those different perspectives, all focused on the same, whether it's use case or product, allows for more flexibility in terms of what can then be offered back into the marketplace.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you another random question. What if you could identify your one favorite feature of Salesforce? So suppose you're sitting and talking to someone who they've been using Salesforce for some time, and there's just one feature that really stands out to you that you'll assume that, or from your experience, a lot of people don't necessarily leverage. What would be that one feature that you would turn to that person, that other Salesforce user, and say, hey, by the way, have you tried the following feature in Salesforce? What would that feature be and why?
It would be Process Builder, no doubt. I love that thing. I wear the wheels off of that thing. I use it so much. It's I don't know. There's just something intuitive about it. It's powerful. You can manipulate data. And it helps you. I don't know. It just makes sense to me. And the first time I used it, it just kind of clicked. And I use it honestly maybe 4 to 5 times a week. I mean, I use it to build demos. I use it to build. So actually, we're building a configuration object here internally that will actually help us track our client success and make sure that we improve communication across our organization.
Right.
And we use a lot of Process Builder with that to pull in data from different objects at the right time, and it's easy. It's easy to manipulate, and I love the thing.
I couldn't agree more. And by the way, for people who are listening, if you're not familiar with Process Builder, if the term is completely unfamiliar to you, so first of all, it's really only fitting for an admin/developer, not necessarily for an end user, like someone who's in a sales, marketing, customer service type of a role as an end user, because it's getting a little bit behind the scenes, under the covers, as far as the Salesforce setup. But what it is an incredibly powerful mechanism that will allow for the Salesforce admin to set up logic and automation that can do a whole slew of really cool things, like updating a record, pushing information from one record to another, creating a new record, reassigning a record, sending out an email alert. I mean, you can keep going on and on with different scenarios, different logic, and different outcomes that should come about when the logic is met, which basically provides, the way I see it, it's like building blocks to really like you're getting like a kid, like you get a box of Lego. You can build pretty much whatever you want out of it, which is pretty slick. I love it.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, good stuff. So Caleb, I appreciate you joining the podcast. Thank you for sharing your insights, your wisdom, the best practices on using MapAnything for different organizations. Look at that within even a relatively short time period. We talked about using MapAnything for not only different functions, also different types of industries to really revolutionize the way businesses operate. So thank you, Caleb, for sharing your insights and wisdom with us. I appreciate it.
No, David, my pleasure. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yep.
Looking forward to following the podcast here.
You bet. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
All right, take care.
Yep. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Brainy 8 Show. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to any resources referenced in this podcast. Also, don't forget to head over to brainy8.com to subscribe to the Brainy 8 blog, where I regularly share Salesforce-related tips and tricks to help you become a Salesforce rockstar.